The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're powered by Hurrdat Sports. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. Plenty of room to jump in here this first hour. 489-1240. 489-1240. Can join us. 800-825-5865. And watch the show on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. In hour one, we'll run down Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Plenty of things for Coach Rhule to discuss on a Tuesday during the bye week. A call-out in loving fashion of Nebraska's RB1. Or, well, he hopes to be RB1 if he can hold on to the football. We'll get there on Anthony Grant. Pretty pointed words and not throwing under the bus or backing the bus up. But Nebraska, if you want them going to postseason in Arizona or Detroit or, dare I say, Pinstripe, I mean, you can go down the list, right, of bowl opportunities if things really get crazy and fun for Nebraska in the second half of the season. It's going to be Anthony Grant with some 100-yard rushing days and some zero fumble days. So we'll go there in a little bit. Of course, Mitch Sherman this hour. Matt Schick will join us of ESPN and Schick and Nick fame coming up in hour two. And then the Gentleman Jim. I need a Gentleman Jack right now. The weather's awesome. But Gentleman Jim Walden, longtime coach, going to join us in hour two. Love his thoughts on Nebraska, but also the Pac-12 because it's a Oregon-Washington showcase this weekend. So college football on our mind. The mayor was alive and well in Minneapolis as Coach Hoiberg took to the microphone for Big Ten Media Days. Nebraska pegged 12th. They'll need to do a little bit better than that. I think they could. So a lot on the table here. And somebody owes me a steak.
Oh, now you're going to ask for it. Even the fact I was up. I think
we weren't up. We were even.
I don't think we were. I think
really?
I was all time. Maybe you were up within the past year.
All time. This is one of those records like
all time. I probably owe you a half a cow.
You do. I mean, all time. If we're going all time, I think it's. Think of the rivalry record that's not really a rivalry. Colorado, Nebraska. Not recently, mind you. But that's how things had been going. But you've had your shots in there. You've won your share of steak and beer bets, just not last night. What was that, 16-12? Was that the score? 17-13? Something like that?
I was picking a steak and a beer bet.
At 8 o'clock.
I was picking a steak and a beer bet with my heart. My roommate's a big Packers fan. I was really on his side last night. I also hate the Raiders, being a Broncos fan. So it was, they tell you to bet with your head, not your heart. And yesterday, the steak and a beer bet was with my heart instead of my head. And I'm reaping the consequences today. I've accepted it. I've just come to discover that Jordan Love, maybe he's not a good NFL quarterback after all. He had a couple of bad picks last night. I think 2 of the 3 at least were bad. I think you could maybe argue all 3. And hey, the Raiders deserved the win last night. It's as simple as that, as much as it pains me to say. The Packers were just not the better football team. Can't stand Josh McDaniels after what he did to the Broncos. I can't stand the Raiders as a whole, just based on their history with the Broncos.
It's confession. You're fine. Keep going.
Sometimes evil wins in this world, and we saw that last night.
Wow, man, that's straight out of some superhero movie. I like it. So I'm gonna ask this heart v head and bring it back to Nebraska for a moment. Your heart tells you what? That Matt Rhule, you're hoping as a Nebraska fan, Matt Rhule can do the impossible. They sweep their next 3, and then they split. They go 2-1 against Wisconsin, Iowa, Maryland. And these guys get to 8. That's what your heart's hoping for. Your heart's really honestly hoping for 6 or better. But your head tells you what? And let's lay this out. Let's lay the seriousness of the situation out on offense. Your running back that was close to a grand last year is having fumble problems. Your quarterback situation is to the point where they've got to make some plays downfield against these future defenses they're going to be facing. That's very real. Oh, and by the way, your best big play threat on offense has been Marcus Washington. He is done with an ACL, and that sucks because he's a good dude. Sucks for anybody, but it really sucks for him because he's a big-bodied wideout that there was some comfort there. Well, so heart or head question here, what do you believe about this wide receiver group being able to grow up here in accelerated fashion? They've been brought along slowly. There's requirements to get on the field, playbook requirements, and the talent's there. It's not a question of talent, but with Doss, with Lloyd, with Malachi, you're going to need all three of them, man. And can you get all three of them up to speed to contribute? That's the charge, and that's what needs to happen. And can you take care of the football while you're at it running the football?
Now, I want to go to Washington here just real fast here because I don't want to skirt over that loss and how big it is. I think Marcus Washington, he might not get drafted this year, especially now coming off a knee injury. That's a tough injury to face before we can assume try to make your name for yourself in the pros. And I think he was the guy that was going to find a spot on a roster some way, somewhere, somehow. He's a guy that plays the game the right way. I've been impressed with him every time I've seen him on the field. Was he Trey Palmer? No, and we saw how Trey Palmer slid last year, but Trey Palmer has also worked his way up into being a guy who's getting some pretty significant snaps as a rookie for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I don't think Trey Palmer is necessarily the best example. I mean, but a guy that can find a spot in a practice squad, get his way at a 53-man roster, do what needs to be done from him on special teams. He was a guy that I think had a professional future in front of him. Mature, exactly. That's the right word I'd use. Now you look at it, man, coming off a knee injury, especially at this point, we're usually talking a 9 to 12-month recovery. That's a guy who's going to then miss a lot of rookie minicamp. Might not even be a full go for your first ever NFL training camp. That's a rough spot to be in for Marcus Washington. So I want to start off this conversation by talking about him and just saying, man, I feel for him on a day like today. The fact that your future has now become a little bit cloudy based on a senior year knee injury. So really, really feel for Marcus Washington because I think he had a bright future. I still think he has a bright future, but it's going to be some uphill sledding for him over the next probably 12 months or so trying to find his spot into the ranks of professional football. Now on to the freshman receivers that Nebraska have. They really need to step up because Nebraska's receivers that are still remaining, still able to being played, have a combined 32 receptions on the year. 20 of those come from Billy Kemp. And whenever you look at the guys outside of Billy Kemp, all but Alex Bullock are actually being outpaced in terms of receptions per game by Anthony Grant. Anthony Grant has 3 receptions on the year. Alex Bullock has 7. Nobody else has 3 aside from Billy Kemp in that wide receiver room right now. Oh, man, does Garrett McGuire have his work cut out for him over the next couple of weeks trying to get those guys ready to go, and that's not a good thing. He's got talk about uphill battles. He's got an uphill battle to face through the bye week and through the next couple of weeks of October to get his guys, his freshmen, geared up because it's not really the place you want to be thrusting a freshman wide receiver into. You're going to have to find some guys that are going to step up, and you're glad that Jaden Doss is back from that forearm injury now. That's a huge time to get him back before the bye week, getting him geared up because you're going to need him over the next couple of weeks. You're going to need Malachi Coleman. You're going to need Jalen Lloyd. You're going to need all those guys to finish the season. And oh, man, I don't think any Husker fan out there likes what Nebraska has in the wide receiver room right now, and it's kind of just been the story of the offense.
You love the
potential.
Right? You love the potential of them. Are they ready now? Are they mature enough? We go back to that word in maturity. Marcus Washington, very mature team guy, did it all, and was your big play threat. Doss, Lloyd, Coleman. Doss has battled back. Lloyd has seen some time. Malachi's got some more time. And all three need to suck it up and buy in if you're a Nebraska fan. And they want to do it for themselves and their teammates, obviously, but it's easier said than done with that freshman year when you're being kind of thrown into the deep end. Let's hear from Matt Rhule on the young guys at wide receiver. How do you manage that wide receiver spot? You're at bye now, and you've got a week to get better together and then get them ready for Northwestern and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, Malachi played on Friday. Jaden Doss played on Friday. Jalen Lloyd played on Friday. I think all three of them have to be ready to go. So all three of them have come a long way. They've gotten better and better and better. They appeared ready to go on Friday night, and I think this is a great week for them to. We went out and practice today, so those guys need to step up, and I'm sure they will.
But you talk about the fact that they played on Friday, Schmitty. They played to Malachi Coleman, 1 reception for 5 yards, Jalen Lloyd, 0 receptions for 0 yards, and Jaden Doss, 0 receptions for 0 yards.
They were on the field, and they were doing their other jobs, but are they able to contribute, like in all facets? Or are you limiting an already very limited offense anyway? I mean, it's dire with what you can do on offense. And that safety blanket has been running the football. And now that's a bit in question because of the fumbles.
Well, and if there is a silver lining to this week, Schmitty, it's that
you don't have to play anybody. You just play. You play each other, and you try and get better.
You don't have to play anybody. You have a week to get healthy and get better. And hey, where you have the really debilitating injuries at the wide receiver spot, not the offensive line. And we've seen Nebraska; they want their bread and butter to be running the football this year. So if there's a silver lining to take away from it, it's hey, you lost the position on your offense, which probably had the least production on the year anyway. And part of that was due to the guys in the room. Part of that's been due to injuries as the year's gone on. Part of it's how you want your offense to be constructed. But receiver spot has not been the focal spot of the offense coming into this year. So you're not expecting to put a huge burden onto those freshman receivers. It's not USC. It's not Colorado. It's not these guys getting targeted 10 to 15 times per game. It's still going to be a chance for these guys to develop while on the field in a way that you're hoping doesn't limit their development because you're throwing them in too early. I mean, you're not going to be putting a lot on their plates this season. You're putting more than you would have liked to, I think, but it's not your offensive line. I mean, you've already lost a fair number of running backs, but could be worse, I guess.
It's bare bones now. All right, we'll get to more of your comments.
But I think you'd rather throw in a freshman wide receiver for significant snaps than a freshman offensive lineman. Is what the heart of my point I'm trying to make.
No, totally. But it's not. I mean, the guys playing now played as freshmen, and they never really. They've gotten a little bit better, but they're still a work in progress from what you want to be on the offensive line. Chris chimes in, so happy that I was wrong. Herbies will not go 2-10. That's right. They are 3-3. That works. More from Matt Rhule on the wideout, specifically getting Doss back and the other options they have.
Yeah, I think the fact there wasn't anything with his lower body. I mean, our guys do a great job of keeping guys in shape. He broke his arm. So we just had to wait for it to heal. Once it healed, he's been integrated back in. So he was out, back in for a week, and then a little something. I think maybe I can't remember Michigan week if he was up or not. Forgive me, but then he was up obviously last week, and actually called a reverse for him in the game. Sat did, and they checked out of it because they were blitzing the corner. But Jaden's a really good player. Jalen's a really good player. Malachi's a really good player. Ty Hahn stepped up. Bullock, I thought, made the plays we all know Bullock's capable of making. So we'll need those guys to go.
Bright side, I gotta love it. What was that?
Yeah,
someone hacking in?
I was confused for a second. I had Football Reference pulled up, and they had an autoplay ad going that I had to quickly mute. So.
Yeah, that's fine. Cruz chimes in. Love hearing from Cruz. As a Nebraska fan, I feel good that the next 3 games. About the next 3 games where our defense is. Northwestern's got an interim coach. Purdue, not as strong as they have been in the past. And, well, there's Michigan State. They'll have an interim coach. They have an interim coach. So it's time to capitalize for Nebraska, but you're going with some Utes or youths. Brett emails in, chris@halevarsity.com. Run the damn ball guy loves this offense. Where are the tight ends? Good question. You got Borkacher, and you've got Fedoni. Fedoni's been there. He's been a target. He's been a primary option. But you've got Bonner you can throw to. He made his first career catch just the other day on a big 3rd down conversion, I believe.
And according to Football Reference, 1 reception for 5 yards on the year for Bonner.
Spider 2, why banana? Wear it out.
I mean, you just dive into the numbers, though, and you get worried because it's Fleeks, 2 receptions for 6 yards. Emmett Johnson, 2 receptions for 20 yards. Anthony Grant, 3 receptions for 12. Bonner, 1 for 5. You have Ty Hahn, 1 reception for 21 yards on the year. Malachi Coleman, 1 for 5. Jalen Lloyd, 1 reception for 19 yards. And you have Alex Bullock, 7 for 119. And Billy Kemp, 20 receptions for 219 yards. This is essentially what Nebraska has in terms of receiving threats this year. And I guess I'll throw Fedoni in there as well, 12 for 157. That's what Nebraska has.
Right. And how many fumbles does their backfield have? Quarterback and running backs together. They lead college football.
It's 14, yeah? Is that the number?
And Harburg has only lost 1. To his credit, he's jumped on it. We'll hear a little bit more this hour. More of your comments coming into the stream. Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Can watch the show, listen that way, wherever you hear us across the Hail Varsity Radio Network, and also on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. But we'll get to some of Coach Rhule's comments about Anthony Grant, the running game, the expectation, and really identity moving forward. But it is a bye week. Matt Schick with us in less than an hour. His take on the Big Red and some of the options for the college football playoff. Jim Walden, Hall of Fame coach, longtime Nebraska guy, his take as well on the Pac-12 race and, yes, Nebraska. Mitch Sherman's on the way.
It's that time.
Hey, Mitch. Mitchie. We're looking for you, pal.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, talking Big Red.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Unleash the fury!
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity on a Tuesday. You hear that open, and it means it's time for Mitch Sherman. I just got a text from my son who's letting me know that there is an Audi 2017 for sale. So every time we talk to Mitch Sherman, it never fails on a Tuesday at 4:26. I get a text from my kid, hey, let me get an Audi. And I get a chance to talk to Mitch Sherman. I'm excited to talk with Mitch.
Well, you have to ask
Can
the
I
question.
block my own son on his number, Mitch? Is that bad parenting? You're thinking it over.
Try it. I don't think I would do it because there's always that concern that he might actually need you for something. Is he like? So why is he notifying you about these vehicles for sale? Are you supposed to then turn around and buy this for him, or what? Is that the hint here?
Okay, here's what happened. It's a year to the day we bought him his first car. All right. Said car may have been a foreign model. Said car did not last the 3 months it was supposed to last for warranty. We got a full refund. We went and got newer vehicle that has warranty that is fine. But he wants his foreign option, and he keeps letting us know.
Well, the question with the foreign option is can he afford the inevitable $10,000 you need to fix it after the 1 year you've owned it?
He has not answered that question.
Seems like you should just be happy to have
Thank
wheels
you.
that are functioning. But
Right.
My
yes.
first car was a minivan.
Really?
Yeah. The women loved it.
I would hope that every time that you pulled up in the driveway in a minivan, that your date's father had a long, serious talk with you with a sharp object or a firearm in hand.
Well, the minivan showed I was ready to be a family man already,
I
at age
see.
16, except when I was doing donuts in the parking lot in the minivan, which my dad never saw that video.
No, that's bad. Mitch, let's talk about Nebraska football. And is Garrett and Rhule in the parking lot of Memorial Stadium ripping off donuts right now because, hey, no one got hurt today?
that could be. Although we don't know the full report from practice. Maybe somebody did get hurt. It's been a rough stretch for Nebraska on the injury front, and the unfortunate part, or the difficult to handle part for Nebraska is, I think they've done as well as they possibly could, as any program could, over these first 10 months with Matt Rhule in charge, of putting a system in place that looks out for the health of the players. And yet you're continuing to see these things happen in non-contact situations, just unavoidable moments in the game of football. Not a lot of re-injury, which is more easily prevented than initial injury, but it just seems that it doesn't just seem, it is in fact true that they're heavily hitting one area of the team, and that would be the ball carriers and playmakers on the offensive side, and then with Marcus Washington, of course, being the latest to go down Friday night at Illinois, and we find out today that it's a season-ending ACL.
Mitch, let's dive into the offense moving forward and the reality of it. 3 freshman wideouts that are talented. There's upside, a running back room that you like the talent Grant has, but he's been notified publicly again by his head coach about fumbling. You've got Emmett, you've got Fleeks, and you've got some teams that Rhule nailed it in his media session today that it's 6 games that Nebraska could win, it's 6 games Nebraska could lose. What is the what's the formula here if you're Sat, if you're Rhule, and you're Raiola to go with who's healthy, but also deal with that inexperience and also some guys right now that aren't taking care of the football?
Yeah, the formula. I mean, it's some kind of a mix of experience and youth and taking risk, but also being wary of limiting turnovers, and that's the challenge for the coaches on the offensive side. Is they don't have a lot of cards left in their hands, and they've got a number of issues in every area. Whether you're talking about playing experience in the Big Ten, or you're talking about this issue that Nebraska has continued to have with turnovers, and you have to somehow mix and match to find the right combination. And I think one thing that we saw from Matt Rhule in the week after the Michigan game, leading up to Illinois, is that he is willing to take risks when it comes to this team. The more time he spends around them, the more he gets to know them and coach them and integrate them into the system that he has intended to build since he arrived on campus. And you saw him take a risk, I think, in the way that he kind of stuck his neck out after the Michigan game, on the Monday after the Michigan game again, the way that they approached that practice last Sunday. And I mean, if it hadn't gone well at Illinois, Rhule would have been open to some criticism for handling things the way that he did after Michigan. But, they turned things around with their energy and played more loose despite some of the mistakes in the second half. And, you saw a team, I think, that responded to the challenge that he put out in front of them. And then he took some risks in the game, too, going forward on 4th down in the first half, and that paid off. So moving forward, I think that's probably a precursor of the way it's going to go. They'll take some risks, but you don't want to be ill-advised. You don't want to take risks that are unnecessary and end up creating a situation where you're turning the ball over at the wrong moment.
It's Mitch Sherman with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking Nebraska, the path forward, and the bye week. And Mitch, whenever you think about this bye week as a whole, there's some important factors for Nebraska in terms of a chance for some guys to get healthy. You think about Reimer and you think about Singleton. You think about the opportunity for the young wide receivers. You got to get them ready. You got to clean up some fumbling issues for Anthony Grant moving forward, and really those turnovers with the offense as a whole, as you just kind of laid out. And I want to get your thoughts on what the number one order of business should be for Nebraska in the bye week. What's the one thing that, if they can get it right during the bye, will lead to the most success in the final 6 games?
I think the number one thing they have to do is focus on being healthy, because it's just been one thing after another. And, you can't do anything about the season-ending injuries. But as you mentioned, Elijah, there are some players like Reimer and some others. Jeff Sims is on that list too. Players who are dinged up. And the important thing is to make sure that those guys are getting the rest that they need and at the same time the preparation, so that when the second half of this season starts, they can be as close to full strength with the players who are still available as possible. So you take out the guys whose seasons are over, and then the rest, They need to be as close to 100% as possible. There's gonna still be some things, I'm sure, that hold them back, but they need to have their entire arsenal, what's left of it, available to them from the get-go. I mean, against Northwestern. So that's, to me, is the number one thing. And then number two is cleaning up some of the little bugs that have been in the system, and that's the false starts. Some of the mental errors that we've seen with this team. And I think you can even classify a lot of the turnover issues into the mental error category. There's a way that they want Anthony Grant to hold the ball. There's a way that they want him to run with the ball and carry the ball so that he's less likely to get it knocked out in crunch time when teams are really poking and popping at that thing. And some of that, a big part of that, is mental in addition to being physical. He's got to be strong. If he has an arm injury, then that is a reason for some of his ball security, but that's not been the case. We've not heard anything about that. It's just he's not holding the ball right. So all of those little things on top of being as healthy as you can be, and you accomplished that, you've had a good bye week.
Mitch, going to wrap up with you on this. Thanks for a few minutes today. Mitch Sherman, The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. When we talk about the quarterback spot moving forward, I mean, it's going to be a daily competition. And do you anticipate that race getting tight with Sims getting back healthy? Or do you think Haarberg is going to be able to continue to raise his game and fend off any would-be folks that want to take that top spot with Purdy, with Sims, and Haarberg's, going on start 5 here after the bye week?
Yeah, I think right now he's entrenched. He's the starter. And I don't really envision it changing based on practice. And I know the coaches are going to say it's a daily competition, and in a sense it is. But there comes a time for a quarterback, and really at a lot of positions, where you're basing the decision on who starts in the game more off the performance, and not just the performance, but just the leadership and the overall response that Nebraska's got from its team when he's been in charge. You're basing it more off of that than you are from like the ebb and flow of a Tuesday to a Wednesday to a Thursday in practice. And, I think Heinrich would really have to go out and get hurt or just have a terrible week, which, he's not in position to do. He's going to practice hard in order to lose that job going into the next game. So I think it's his right now. And then the game, of course, is so important. And what happens against Northwestern, that's where something could change in the pecking order. And then what happens against Purdue, the same thing. But right now, I think Nebraska's in a position where it's his job, and they're going to go with the guy that got them to this place, the guy who's won 3 games and 4 starts, and see how far they can ride this.
Mitch, to get you out of here, I don't want to look too far ahead. We got about 60 seconds. Can you power rank the 3 most important games remaining on Nebraska's schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I'd put Purdue in that category. I'd put Iowa in that category. And then, I suppose I would say Michigan State, because you don't count anything as a win for Nebraska in the Big Ten. There's only about 3 teams in the Big Ten, I think, where you can just count games as wins, and Nebraska is obviously not in that category. But I do think that any game that you lose all of a sudden becomes the most important game. But I'm kind of I'm a heavy lean toward Nebraska against Northwestern. So if you talk about the most important games left on the schedule, I'd say what I'm looking at is the games that are the closest to being toss-ups, and that for me is Purdue, Michigan State, and Iowa.
Mitch, we'll check in again soon. Good to spend some time with you today. Thanks for a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, guys. Take care.
There he is, Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic. At Mitch Sherman, more from Coach Rhule. And Elijah and I can arm wrestle a little bit here on that power ranking and the turnover topic. More of your comments in the stream as well. Hail Varsity YouTube channel to jump in.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by your friends at Hurrdat Sports. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Reminder about your friends at Dyer Law, workers' compensation. Are you confused about your options for workers' comp? Put your trust in the team at Dyer Law to help ensure that your rights are protected and you get the settlement you deserve. Call the team at Dyer Law today, 1-888-DYER-LAW, 1-888-DYER-LAW, or visit Dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about your workers' compensation claim. Dyer.law, 1-888-DYER-LAW for workers' compensation. Our phone number, 489-1240, 489-1240, as we get into a good idea from one Elijah Herbel, the power ranking. And is it okay to put Northwestern off to the side? Can you get big for your britches after winning 3 out of 4 if you're Nebraska?
That's why
the staff and the players aren't. But the fan base and us radio pukes, we're a different story.
Well, let me present it to you this way, Schmidt. When you think of power ranking the remaining opponents, you have to look at it in 2 ways. 1, the importance of getting a win in this game, and 2, how detrimental would a loss be in this game.
Okay.
And a loss to Northwestern would be so incredibly detrimental that I don't think you can throw it to the side because, as Mitch kind of said, like, hey, you can't chalk up games as wins in the Big Ten whenever you're Nebraska and where you've been over the past couple of years. I mean, you really couldn't even do that under Pelini. I remember a game where Rutgers gave you the scare of a lifetime. I think Rutgers went 2-10 or 3-9 that year. It was at home. It was a home game where the game was close until about the end of the third quarter.
Telemere had to turn.
He put on his Superman cape at the end of the third quarter, put up a couple touchdowns, and made that game seem not as close as it was. But, like, I'm not ready to look at that Northwestern game and say, yeah, man, those Wildcats, they don't stand a chance. They beat Minnesota. Last I checked, Nebraska couldn't beat Minnesota. And I know you can't compare football games apples to apples like that because that's not how it works, but let's not act like this Northwestern team is in as much of a free fall as Michigan State is right now. And Michigan State's not an automatic win either.
No, because you're on the road, and who the hell knows when that is. I know that we'll be there for it in East Lansing, ready for Nebraska, Michigan State. And if things go how Nebraska fans may envision them, it is going to be that 6th win. That gets you to bowl eligibility. And Nebraska could be heading into Maryland at 6-3. I know we're fast forwarding, and that's not wise to do because you don't know what college football team shows up from Saturday to Saturday. You know that you don't have to worry about losing this Saturday if you're a Nebraska fan. You get to put your feet up, pour a cocktail, and watch somebody else sweat for 4 hours and just enjoy. But Northwestern coming in at 2:30. I mean, that game, I think Nebraska's probably an 8-point favorite, maybe a 10-point favorite. I don't know that 10 points get scored by Nebraska's offense without some help. But that's where they're at, man. It's dire. Brandon chimes in on some of the things we're talking about when it comes to the wide receivers. These young guys have huge upside. Just imagine if we can get to 22-25, the Wisconsin game with that crew that still has grown while the worst 3 teams in the Big Ten getting through. Did I?
You butchered that, but he didn't do you any favors.
Thank you, Brandon. Let's retype that. Sorry, because
it was a good thought. I think he's saying, imagine how much different the Wisconsin game looks if you can get those 3 freshman receivers geared up over the next 3 games.
You're going to have to.
Yeah.
You're going to absolutely have to. Brandon, thanks for chiming in on that, bud. Appreciate it. Delane wants to know the status of Reimer and Singleton injured. How soon are they back? Don't know.
Not out for the year. That's all we know. From Rhule, all we know is he'll give you an update if they're out for the year. That's why we got the update Dan Washington, out for the year. As for guys like Reimer and Singleton and a guy in Prince William Amelin, I butchered his last name probably there.
It's Princewell. His first name basis.
Princewell.
Just call him Prince.
Not out for the year. That's about all we know on those guys.
Listen, I don't know that Maryland is not going to be punch drunk by the time they come into Memorial Stadium. I don't know that Nebraska is going to be injury-free. Say the injury bug stops after today. You don't know that that's going to be a real thing either. Michigan State, tire fire right now. Iowa, what are they all about with 2 losses in the West? Assuming they don't go to Madtown and win. Maybe they do. I don't know. They're not far removed from 31-0 where defense kept them in as long as they could. Let's hear about the running back situation, specifically Anthony Grant and the topic of fumbling said football. And cut 8 here. Coach Rhule was asked how important Anthony Grant is.
Well, he's not okay with me because he keeps fumbling the ball. I love Anthony, but you can't play for us if you can't control the ball. So Anthony, he's got to improve that. Not in the doghouse. People take things the wrong way. He's got a skill that is not showing up. It's very simple. To me, it's all technical. Football's never emotional for me. It's just technical. So I have to get that fixed for Anthony, and Anthony has to get that fixed for Anthony, or he can't play because we can't. You can't fumble the ball in practice on Tuesday, then fumble it again in practice on Wednesday, then fumble it in 4 minutes on Saturday and think you're going to play the next week. So I think the bye week comes at a great time because Anthony can really work on that this week. He's got such great vision. He has all these things, but he has one skill that's preventing him from playing at the level I think he could play at. So, yeah, he's healthy, all those things, but I'm counting on Anthony. And I need him, and we need him to step up, and we need him to very simply cover the top of the ball and not run with the ball like this. And so I don't know what else to do other than to say what I just said. And I've said it to him, obviously, but say what I just said so he hears it because he's a really good player that could probably play for many years after this. But you're not playing for Bill Belichick if you fumble the ball. You're not playing for Mike Tomlin if you fumble the ball. So we need him this week to really make a step.
So public caution. Right now. Said it once, said it twice, said it 3 times, has told him multiple times, imploring him. Now the rest of the teammates need to jump on board, support him. More from Rhule on the root cause. Why is he fumbling?
I did the same thing in Illinois last year. It was a close game. The ball was ripped out. And to me, it's all technical. It's about covering the tip of the ball and keeping the ball high and tight. If you watch Heinrich run with the football, Coach Osborne came in yesterday. We watched some film with us, and he was just talking about how beautifully Heinrich carries the football. He carries exactly like we ask him to do. You watch Tommy Hill. He had that fumble again on the kickoff return, and Tommy Hill picks the ball off the other night, and there's a picture of him. We're going 5 points of ball security. It's a commitment to that. And so Anthony's been running with the ball one way his whole life, not protecting the front tip of the ball, and again the ball getting out here. It's Division I football. You're not going to have a lot of runs where you start right and work back left. It just doesn't happen, especially in 4 minutes. So we've just got to continue to coach him. And we love him. We got to coach him. He's come so far in so many ways. His pass protection, his route running, catching the ball, things that we thought maybe he couldn't do, he can absolutely do. This is something that has to get corrected. At the same time, Josh Fleeks is ready to play. Emmett put the ball on the ground, which was just disappointing on the exchange. So there's obviously a cultural, and that's why I speak things in here sometimes when I want the locker room to hear it. Like, you can't blame all the coaches, blame me, that's fine, but at some point the players have to start saying it, and our players get that. That was what was great yesterday. I talked to our team and said, they wanted to play with a swagger, they wanted to play with energy, they wanted to be, coach, take the leash off us. I'm a little more old school. I said, okay, take the leash off. You can't have 11 penalties though. Can't have the ball inside the 5 twice. And so I said, hey guys, how do we make this where we can play with a certain energy where we don't have these penalties? And Newsom said, well, we have to do it. And I was like, exactly. That's how you change what's happening. So I think it's the same thing with him technically, but at the same time, he needs to hear from his teammates like, hey, bro, we need you to hold it this way every single time.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, more comments coming here on the StreamYard, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, as we're with you out of Tuesday. Good stuff from Mitch Sherman. Podcast will have the interviews you want to hear. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or the Hail Varsity YouTube channel for the video. Matt Schick coming up here in 10 minutes of ESPN and Schick and Nick fame. And we'll run down Jim Walden, longtime coach for Washington State, Iowa State assistant and player for Coach Devetti and Coach Osborne. So we'll talk with the gentleman, Jim, on some Big Red topics and the Pac-12 race. 489-1240. Reminder about buckling up. 1 of every 3 fatal crashes in Nebraska involves an alcohol-impaired driver. Why take chances? If you drink, don't drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. We had plenty from Coach Rhule here this first hour as well. He met with the media today. And let's try and squeeze in what the identity is. Elijah, no matter we talk about running the football or who's going to hold on to the football, who's catching the football, who's a freshman, who's injured, who's quarterback, what's the offensive line look like? Well, Nebraska is going to win and try and win moving forward with that identity about what they're good at when it comes to the run game?
We did a bye week, kind of plan to win with the guys, like all the things we need to improve upon, The one thing we're doing well is, we're first in the Big Ten in rushing offense. We're first in 10-plus yards rushing. I think we're third in yards per carry at 5.1. We're second in rush defense, maybe first or second in defensive yards per carry, and first in 10-plus runs. So we're defending the run well. Third down, we need to get about 7% better on offense and 7% better on defense. I think we're middle of the pack on, I can't remember the numbers, but we're 40% on defense. Okay, we need to be in the low 30s, and we're 37% on offense. We need to be in the mid 40s. So there's a lot of things that are just close. The one thing that's giving us a chance is running the football. We're minus through 6 games. We're I guess minus 7. In the turnover battle, we're 129th out of 133 teams, and that's that could have been a 30-7 game, 35-7, 40-7 game. So there's a lot of things, but our identity of running the football, and taking away and stopping the run, that can't change. That's just a bedrock of who we want to be. It didn't work we couldn't get it done against Michigan. They're beyond that. We were beyond that on that day. But as we move forward, we have to continue to do that. These young receivers, I think we started making some plays in the passing game this past game that allowed us to score some touchdowns by tying some third down conversions. We just have to continue to augment that as we move forward.
So Matt Rhule right there. Scott chimes in. I like listening to Coach Rhule. He's the kind of guy that could tell you to go to hell and have you looking forward to the trip. Like that, Scott. That's well done, sir. I'm going to get some readers. I need to get some readers. Is there any way to fix the font for the old guy in the room here?
You could zoom in on your computer screen to make it bigger, I think. I could show you how to do that during the break.
Can you help me?
Readers are always a good option. They're not too expensive, are they?
I don't know, dude. I need my eyes checked, clearly.
I got a guy. I got my eye doctor.
You got a guy.
He went to high school with one Brandon Vogel, actually. So
did he really?
Nice little connection there.
We will find all that out. Matt Schick is on the way. Jim Walden next hour. Hail Varsity continues. We're powered by Hurrdat Sports.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We welcome in with ESPN, Sirius XM, and, of course, the Schick and Nick podcast. Matt Schick back with us at ESPN_Schick on Twitter. Matt, I'm going to whine. I like talking to you. I'm so thankful that you take the call and then spend time with us, but I'm not going to lie to you, man. I need to be putting for dough right now.
Well, yeah, drive for show, putt for dough, whatever it takes to get on the golf course is really what you need to do. It's hard. These are first world problems you have. You're getting paid to host a radio show. I'm sure people love hearing you complain while they're at their normal desk job. But, when the weather's nice outside, you do need to get outside. It's warmer in Lincoln than it is than I think it is here in Charlotte. So this is like one of 3 days a year I'm actually jealous of you guys.
Well, Charlotte is pretty nice year-round, so you win the battle. We'll take the war today. And I want to get into some college football with you and thoughts on Nebraska getting to recess right now at 3-3.
Yeah, I think this was kind of about what you pegged preseason. I'm not, the one swing game in there was probably Minnesota. I don't think anyone thought they'd start 2-0. Being 0-2 was certainly on the table, and once that happened, you would gladly take 3-3 going into the bye week. I preseason picked them to go 6-6. I still think they will. I think Matt Rhule said it best today. Said it's not a team we can beat, and there's not a team that can't beat us. And that's kind of where you're at with this team. I think in a lot of ways, they're fortunate to have the record they are because they tried to give that game away on Friday.
Well, Matt, it's funny the way that Matt Rhule says we think we can beat all the teams, or we think all the teams can beat us, essentially, because it flies in stark contrast to Scott Frost giving Indiana that bulletin board material a couple years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting because, Rhule kind of calls it like it is. Rhule kind of, he understands where the team is at. He's not saying you better get us now. He's not saying this is the worst we're going to be. He doesn't know what the future holds. He knows it's a slow build. He knows not to make promises and write checks his ego can't cash, or his write checks the body can't cash. I think is the Top Gun line that I butchered, but he is. I think he understands the landscape. I think it's kind of one of those. You're 3-3. You kind of, to go back to the golf analogy, you kind of snuck in a little par putt there. You run off the green. You go to the clubhouse, and now it's ready for the back nine, and hopefully you can keep the momentum going. But frankly, it's one of the downsides of the Big Ten this year is that it's so top heavy. The bright side to that is you only have one of those top heavy teams on your schedule, and you've already played it. Nebraska's toughest game is in the rearview mirror. Its toughest road game is ahead of it outside of the Colorado game. But going to Wisconsin late, not ideal with the team in its first year with a head coach. But, there are a lot of different permutations and possibilities you could spin out for Nebraska's final 6 games.
Matt Schick is with us from ESPN, Sirius XM, the Schick and Nick podcast at ESPN_Schick. As we kind of wind down on Nebraska, what do you foresee offensively with this team? Do you think they can get better under Harburg, or do you think they have to take a look back at Sims?
I'm not sure that it truly matters at this point. I think it's a matter of, who do you trust the most? And it's probably a 1A, 1B with Harburg. I also think this is a team that could probably use some Jeff Sims packages to keep teams on their heels. There just isn't enough to keep a defensive coordinator restless. It might be worth giving them something to think about, assuming he's 100% healthy, or assuming that's on the horizon after the bye week. You kind of work him back in, not as a starter, but as a guy that can mix it up a little bit, whether it's short yardage situation, whether it's just, you're down to your third or fourth string running back. You might as well incorporate Sims in the run game a little bit at quarterback. So I think it's just a matter of how often they turn the ball over, truly. Have better talent, at least better talent than Northwestern. You're going to be on par at the very worst offensively with Iowa. Purdue offensively is a very mixed bag. Defensively, they're pretty good. Iowa might have laid out some sort of defensive blueprint there, and frankly, with the way Nebraska is playing defense and the way they're tackling, they're fortunate that it's just not. It doesn't look like a team that's going to give up big plays. You're going to have to earn it down the field. And that's a good spot to be in, because Nebraska is the kind of team that's not going to get big plays offensively. So you're kind of in a war of attrition of who's going to make the first mistake first on these 7 to 10 play drives. If you want to find the end zone, 12-play drives, and that's a good spot for Nebraska to be in with their margin for error so slim.
Now, what's nice about the bye week is we can go a little bit bigger picture on the season, and specifically the Big Ten West season as a whole. We'll be doing that this week. And I want to get your thoughts outside of Wisconsin. Who has the best offense in the Big Ten West?
Best offense in the Big Ten West, I think, potential-wise, is Purdue. They're just not manifesting itself right now. They throw up 40-plus against Illinois, and then they get stymied against Wisconsin and Iowa. It's certainly not Iowa. Northwestern might scare you a little bit, but Brendan Sullivan, Ben Bryant, put them in a hat, pick it out, see what happens. Illinois has certainly been the most disappointing team at this point, but I guess, that's not the kind of program that's just going to reload when you lose NFL draft picks. So I would probably lean outside of Wisconsin. I would lean toward Purdue, but frankly, you look at the Big Ten mess, there's really not a lot to be concerned about. It seems, the West is going to be decided this week, and that's pretty early here before the mid part of October, but that's kind of what's going to happen here if Wisconsin wins, which they're expected to, and then if not, maybe it drags on another few weeks.
Well, it just feels like, Matt, that outside of Wisconsin, and maybe you could even throw Wisconsin in that category. I don't think I would, but it feels like you have 6 teams that are trying to polish a turd with their offense.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. There's nothing that scares you about any of these teams. None of them. I mean, who's the best player on Iowa offensively? Eric Hall. Who's the best player on Northwestern? Sullivan, who was their backup quarterback, maybe. Minnesota, it's a running back who is kind of in and out of the lineup. Darius Taylor. Who is it for Nebraska? Pick a name out of a hat. Mm-hmm. Thomas Fedoni. Like I don't know who it is offensively. Hudson Card for Purdue. Maybe Maccabee at running back. Illinois. They don't know what they're doing right now. So there's just nothing there that frightens you. The best player in the West, the best player overall, is Braylon Allen, and with Ches Malusi out of the lineup, he's going to be getting 20-plus carries a game.
Matt Schick with us, couple more minutes. Hail Varsity Radio at ESPN_Schick. So, Schick, you covered a lot of national games, and I've always been in the Mario Cristobal camp as a good football coach. Did so at Oregon. I loved the hire for Miami, and then now it's been an ongoing joke about refusing to kneel. In your world, touch on the blowback and the reaction that you've been able to see with being in ACC land, with Miami having an unbeaten season until they didn't.
I wonder if he proposed standing up.
Oh, no. Wow.
I wonder, there are a lot of things that, I tweeted it out earlier in the week that when I was younger and I would play video games with my brother, it might have been PS1, we were playing NCAA football. And you know how you could see the plays that were being decided between on each side, and his screen, when he had a lead late night and didn't have any timeouts, one of his options was QB kneel. And that used to infuriate me. And then he'd select it, and I'm like, well, what are we even doing here? Why am I even here for the last minute and a half of this game? This isn't real life. Play it out. I would have loved to have had a young Mario Cristobal living up the street. We would have had a great, great time playing video. It is one of the most egregious things that you'll see. The fact that it's happened not once but twice. The fact that when you look at the box score, whether they're up 3, up 7, up 40, he's not taking knees. He's playing it out to the final whistle. I don't know, preaching toughness, preaching playing to the finish line. QB, he doesn't believe in the knee. So that's quite the accomplishment there. I don't know how you move on from that. I don't know as a player. It's like this week, hey, we got North Carolina now. Great. That should have been a battle of unbeatens with game day on hand. Instead, we're just kind of licking our wounds here after a loss to Georgia Tech. I don't know how it happens, but I guess we'll find out how much they believe in their coach with how they perform this week.
And Matt, to your point, my favorite tweet I saw this week said that every D1 coaching interview should have a room. The coaching candidate has to walk in. It's NCAA 14 loaded up. 1 minute 30 left. You're ahead by 3. The other team has 1 timeout. If you don't win the game, you can't get the job. And I think it's a perfect representation for what we saw this past weekend.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I've always felt like people auditioning for sportscaster jobs need to be able to throw I need to see your throwing motion for a baseball or football before I take you seriously in your analysis. I think that's legitimate for college coaches as well. Let's see, even if you didn't play the game, let's see if you can play the game, see if it's in the game at EA Sports, and see if you can figure your way out of this panic room here. Because the moment that Mario Cristobal in that job audition selects a toss sweep up 3 with no timeouts left for the opposition at the midfield is the moment they say, "Thank you, sir. We'll let you know. We'll get back to you."
That's pretty good. Are you going to chip in on the Mark Stoops collection plate?
Don't you just love that? Don't you just love the Mark Stoops comment comes on the heels of him saying, "We're not making any excuses, but pay our kids more. We don't have enough money." I love that. That's great. Telling Jack and Judy, who are scraping by to try and get their son and their family to pay for parking at a game, let alone attendance at a game, and they're asking for more money. I just think that's very rich, pun intended there, for Mark Stoops. And it's not wrong. I mean, he's not inaccurate in what he's saying, but there is no universe where, even if everyone in the state gave $10,000, that Kentucky is becoming a football powerhouse. They're just not. The same thing would happen like at Iowa. Let's get the Swarm Collective to raise $1 billion. What are you getting out of that? Not a national championship. So you just kind of have to know where you live, and Kentucky is just not going to be one of those elite level programs. But I understand what he's saying, and you might as well, if he thinks that's the only thing that's stopping him, rather than recruit, develop, retain, and all those things that go into actual coaching, then God bless him. Then shell out the money. But I think there's someone named John Calipari who would like your money to go elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's always a fun hangout relationship between those two. It was
years ago where the recruiting budget for basketball outweighed the entire football budget for football there at Kentucky. So
it
I don't
did.
know if that's swayed at all.
No, I don't know if it's different, but hey, Stoops making 8.6 a year at Kentucky, and 7-5's nice, Matt Schick's with us at ESPN_Schick, host of the Schick and Nick show as well. Schick, I need your top 4 before we say goodbye. The top 4 teams. Who's in Schick's playoff?
Well, right now, based on what they've done and what they've accomplished, and there's so many undefeated teams, I would go just by eye test and resume. Michigan's in there. I would put Florida State in there. I would put Washington in there, and I would probably put Ohio State for their road win against Notre Dame. Okay. I mean, Georgia is probably one of the top 2 teams in the country, but I just need to see a little bit more from them. But I think in the end it'll be Georgia, Michigan, and then fill in the blank. I mean, frankly, the gap between Georgia, Michigan, and the rest of college football, I think, is actually fairly sizable, and it feels like those are going to be the last 2 at the end. But we're only halfway home at this point. I can't wait to see Washington, Oregon. I can't wait to see how Ohio State handles Penn State and Michigan and all those permutations. But I'm still waiting to see more on Oklahoma. I'm not buying in them at this juncture. And frankly, to make the playoff, they have to run the table.
They do, and I could see them slipping up somewhere. Schick, not to leave you on a downer here, but I'm just wondering how are things in Coach Prime land from will Dion be back for a second year? Do you worry about him getting poached?
No, I don't. And frankly, those are good problems to have. If your coach following a 1-11 season a year later is going to get poached, you've done something right. But the university has received tenfold what they paid him at this point. But I'm not. We had Rick George on College Game Day a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, about the conversations he's having with Deion Sanders, and this was right before the Oregon game. And he goes, "We're having conversations. I am not worried at all about him leaving." And frankly, when you hit the over in the win total before mid-October, life is pretty good. They had to win last week to become bowl eligible. They still have to win this week to have a chance to become bowl eligible. But it's been pretty impressive. I'm actually more concerned about Shedeur than I at this point. But hopefully he'll stick around too.
Schick, always great to chat with you, man. Thanks for jumping on with us.
You got it, guys. Enjoy your bye.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. Hail Varsity continues our bye week, and man, we love talking with this riverboat gambler, as he's been called. Gentleman Jim joins us. Jim Walden, longtime coach, Washington State, and of course Iowa State. Played for Coach Devaney, coached with Coach Devaney and Coach Osborne. And Coach Walden, how's your week treating you? We've got a little breather, my friend, until the Big Ten starts back up.
Well, it's all good. My Cougars out here, who naturally out Bullfar, they kind of stubbed their toe this past week, kind of didn't have much offense. I think it's one of those down days when their quarterback just didn't adjust to a new-looking defense. I don't know if a lot of your fans are listening to this, but the old coach's cliche, every now and again, a defensive you'll see you haven't seen, and it's most of the time, Smitty, it's what we used to call a radar defense. Why do you call it a radar? It's because nobody puts their hand on the ground. It's a really good defense to use against a predominantly passing team one time. You don't want to use it 2 times in a row because once these guys all take a look, know who's coming. But UCLA's defensive coordinator did a good job, caught Cougars napping a little bit, flustered their quarterback, and had a bad day. Other than that, I loved it. Nebraska had a big win over Illinois, and so doggone it, I just think Coach Rhule is doing a good job, and I hope the Go Big Redders are hanging in there with him.
Big to get that win just because of the fan base's mood, Coach Walden. A lot of folks we interact with, I mean, there was a fork in the road Friday night, and so many times Nebraska's had a chance to make the right turn, and it hasn't gone that way over several coaches. Well, Nebraska got the win in a tough situation where, and I don't know what your greatest memory as a head man was when it came to getting turnovers in the fourth quarter, or what your worst memory was when it comes to giving the football away. But Nebraska tried to make sure Christmas happened in Illinois last Friday night with that third quarter. 5 trips to plus territory, 3 points, 3 consecutive turnovers, and they still hung on 20-7. So the defense played great, but the offense still a work in progress.
Well, and that can be corrected. Some of the very stuff that caused the trauma won't happen every time. The thing you love about that is the defense is always good in a sense of they're not seasonal. I used to say this all the time. Defenses are not seasonal. Now, they'll have a bad game sometime when they're steps low, but for the most part, Smitty, defenses come to play. They have a system. They have believe in it. And so they'll be there. The Nebraska people need to understand there's still some work to be done by a long shot with Coach Rhule having only there his first year. But as the defense grows, I think you'll be able to depend on it more often. Yeah, they're going to run into trouble when you play a Michigan. I saw that score. But my goodness, those are things that's off the charts of expectations. But the offense, you never know. The offense is, one week you think they're brilliant, the next week they're okay, and then all of a sudden they stink the place up. But in most cases, that can be corrected, and it won't happen again in an equal situation. So, and then the best part of that whole thing you said was that they won anyway, and that's a great thing.
Coach, would you rather have, if you could only have one, would you rather have a great offense or a great defense?
Well, I'd rather have a great defense because I've always believed in my heart, and Bob Devaney taught me that. If the teams you're playing have a hard time scoring, you can figure out a way to score some points. And I believe that with all my heart. Defense, as the old saying on the coaches told us, offense is for show, defense is for dough, and you can't win championships without. You look at any team that wins a championship, they'll always be good on defense. Just take Georgia, for instance, or Alabama of the recent ones. Take Michigan right now. The teams with great defenses are right up there hunting, boy.
Jim Walden's with us. Few minutes, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, when you were with Coach Devaney, what was his requirement, his request, if you played defense for him for those old black shirts?
Well, it was just to give your best, to play hard, make good decisions. He trusted his coaches to weed out the best, if you want to use that term, or to give equal opportunity to everybody to see which guys are going to emerge to the top. In my case, a Willie Harper type or a Rich Glover type, or as Monty would tell you, a lot of the guys we coached, they were there because they were the best. They were tested. We didn't do that, just like in spring ball. We had 20 days of spring practice, and about 16 of those were contact. It's not like it is today. And so we had a little bit easier time, if you want to call it that way, of deciding who was the best. They decided because they came through. And so that's how we did it. It was just a survival of the fittest, so to speak. But you made no bones about it. The 11 guys we put those black shirts on, we believe in our hearts were the 11 best we had.
Jim Walden's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, what do you think of the Big Ten? I know you keep an eye on it. The East is such a beast, but the West is kind of still up for grabs. You've got Wisconsin and Iowa this weekend in Madtown. Who knows what Nebraska, when they can get fixed on offense, but I think you're right about the defense. You got to feel good about it. And, Minnesota's been struggling. Illinois is not great. Purdue's looked down. I mean, it's wide open, and it doesn't look like anyone can seize it. Whoever wins Saturday in Madison's probably in your driver's seat, but there's still a lot of football to play.
Well, no doubt about it. You're only halfway through the season and less than halfway through the conference schedules. And so you just say, okay, who's out in front now? Well, you'd have to say Wisconsin and Iowa. Well, they're fixing to play. So the winner of that's going to have a leg up on most everybody else for the time being. We watched Wisconsin out here, Schmidt. The Cougars played a great game. They needed to against Wisconsin and pulled out the win. But don't sell them short. They're a good football team. And I said when we were through, that might be our best win of the season because they're going to get better. Wisconsin, I believe, was going to get better, especially offensively, and I think they've done just that. So I know Iowa. You beat Iowa, you better prepare to win. You better be prepared to do it with about 2 touchdowns and a couple of field goals. So they're not going to let you have much more than that. But they are great on defense. They've always been, as long as Kurt's been there, it's just been we're going to play great defense and we're going to dare you to score. And at the end, we've got enough points, we'll win it. And that's just what I think the ball game will be. I think it'll be a 2-touchdown, couple of field goal winner game.
Do you think either of those teams, Wisconsin or Iowa, stand a chance against Michigan in a potential Big Ten championship game, or even Penn State or Ohio State? There's a lot of intrigue in the East among those 3 teams. Who's going to be representing the conference in the title game? Like, if you're Wisconsin or Iowa, you win this game, but at what cost? You got to go play Michigan at the end of the year potentially.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think there's 3 really, really good football teams in the Big Ten right now. I think for everybody on the west side, they're happy because they're all over on the eastern side. But with Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, those are 3 really good football teams. And I'll be very surprised. And I know this is maybe going to shock you guys, but I'm not too sure that Penn State might not be the best of the 3.
I'm with you.
We'll see. Time will tell. But as far as a combination of O and T, it seems to me like Penn State can meet the standard on either side. And that's just the way I see it. But that doesn't mean Ohio State and Michigan are not darn good. It's going to take a good football team to beat Michigan. I believe that.
And I think the one question mark with that Penn State team, coach, is the young quarterback, Drew Aller, because you know how important quarterbacking is, especially in the modern game of college football. You don't like having a question mark there. I've liked what I've seen from him so far this year, but you wonder what happens whenever he goes up into a test like the Michigan defense, whether or not he's going to be able to rise that. I think that's the one question that remains with Penn State, but I'm right there with you. I think Penn State's a fantastic all-around football team.
Well, I do too, and I think every week their quarterback will get more confident as he is.
Mm-hmm.
And when the big day comes, you just got to hope he rises to the occasion because they are going to challenge anybody's quarterback because they're good on defense. Michigan is really good.
Jim Walden's with us. Couple more minutes, Hail Varsity Radio. Let's preview the Pac-12, Coach. You got SC at Notre Dame. Oregon, Washington's going to be great. Do you think the Pac-12 is good enough to get 2 in? If you had to pick one, who you riding with?
Well, I'm going to ride with the winner of the Washington-Oregon game this week, and I will give the edge to Washington for 2 reasons. I just think their quarterback now, I don't want to get my Eugene, Oregon people mad at me, but I love Bo Nix. I think he's done a great job for them, but I like Penix a lot, man. I mean, he gets rid of the ball. He's got such a quick release, and again, I could be shocked, but I'm going to give the edge, just like the bookies. I think it's 2.5 points. That's about what I feel. Home field advantage, really good quarterback, good overall program. I'm going to give Washington the nod. And if they do beat Oregon, I really don't believe USC is going to be a factor. I don't know. I don't know if USC plays both Oregon and Washington. I'm not sure they play either one with these crazy schedules. But I don't think USC's defenses don't let them win a championship, guys. They're just terrible on defense. And that's hard to say because you're so used to talking about USC, and then when you say bad defense in the same breath, it almost takes your breath. But they're awful. I mean, I'm sorry, but they're awful on defense. And I just don't think you can beat good teams. But I think Oregon and Washington are better on both sides of the ball than USC.
Well, get this, Coach. USC, not only do they play both Oregon and Washington, they play them in back-to-back weeks in November. They start off with Washington, and then they have Oregon. Then, you get UCLA the week after that. So they have a gauntlet to close their season.
Well, I think UCLA is fair. I don't think they're great. The Cougars, I thought, just did not handle their adjustments on offense Saturday. And even with that, they only got beat 8 points. And it was pretty ugly football, if you'll know the truth, on both sides of the ball. But because Cougars are good on defense, they blocked the field goal, had a pick six, but their offense just stunk. For the first time since Jake's been coaching here, and with this kid Cameron Ward, their offense just really was bad. But, hey, that's going to happen. Unfortunately, it happens everybody all the time, always has. But I just like Oregon and Washington to finish both ahead of USC. I know Williams is a great quarterback. He won the Heisman. I personally didn't think he was the best quarterback or the best Heisman winner last year. I thought there were several guys better. One at Ohio State for sure was a better quarterback. And then you had Georgia and TCU. Both had guys I thought were very deserving. But it is what it is. But you're not going to win championships with USC's defense, so I don't think they can win the conference even. And we haven't even talked about Utah's defense. And believe me, folks, Oregon State's a good football team, guys. Do not sell them short. They are an old throwback, run the ball first, pound the play action pass. Reminds me of Tom Osborne. And that's a bad memory for me when I'm thinking about Tom because he wore my ass out.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Jim Walden's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, we still got you?
Yeah.
I want to go back to the play action part, and Nebraska's trying to use that. And Cam Ward is a guy that kind of had our radar up back in 21 because of his transfer situation, and Nebraska was looking. Now, I think they ended up getting Casey Thompson, and when Casey was healthy, Casey was fine. But what do you have up there in the Palouse with Cam Ward? I know last week was last week, but he's been phenomenal, and quite honestly, you're loaded, you being the Pac-12, with all sorts of quarterback options this year.
Well, he's really good, and he's got an unbelievable knack and an uncanny ability to escape, to get away from things. He's got a nice delivery, and he's so accurate. That's when I knew that the Cougars were in trouble last week. The first 3 passes he threw. Now, a week before, he went like 12 for 12, and not all of them were wide open hook routes. But last week, the very first pass he threw was a hook route about 9 yards over. There's a reaction, hook over the middle type thing, an adjustment, what we call an adjustment against a man hook. He threw it right on his feet. I mean, I said, uh-oh. And so the next 2 passes were very similar. And I went, uh-oh, we better get regrouped here, because I have not seen him throw 3 bad passes in a row like that since he got here. And it turned out to be just that. He followed those 3 up with 17 more. So he had 20 incomplete passes and 2 picks last week. So you can see how badly he played. Getting back to the good, he's been an unbelievably good quarterback for the Cougars, guys. He just has done so many good things. He adjusts the thing, and Coach Dickert and these offensive coordinators have really done a good job keeping him with making this football team go.
The league in general, though, you guys are loaded with quarterbacks this season.
Yeah, well, there's no question about that. You got one at USC. You got one at Washington, one at Oregon, one at Washington State. It is unbelievable how many good quarterbacks started the season already, distinguished guys, and none of them are letting up. I mean, every one of them have already had great outings, and it's just going to continue. The league is as strong as I've seen it in 10 years, and we already know that all the ugliness has happened, which the more you look at I mean, it's just amazing to me to look at football, all the sports that's going on in the fall with women's volleyball, soccer, football, and you see where the Pac-12 is ranked in all of them. You go, we did what? We're going to blow up the league? So it just tells you how much emphasis is on football, guys. It's all about football. Don't ever let anybody tell you. Presidents will sell their soul for $1 more million per year difference, and that's what they did. They had about 10 presidents out here that sold their soul for a few more $million per year.
Well, Coach, with the future of the Pac-12 and all the quarterback wealth, would you be willing to pull some strings and allow the quarterback wealth to be shared with Nebraska?
Well, I don't know if I've got any strings hard enough to pull to get them there, but it's going to be interesting to see what the two that's left do. There's some pretty feeble grounds out here, guys, but I think the biggest deficit for all of them, and, Cameron's got another year, and if Nebraska has a chance to get him, I advise you to pick him up in the portal, and I don't know, he may go pro, he may not, but right now it's just a very terrible thing for the two left because they don't know if they're going to be in a conference. They can't set their schedules. They're going to have to deal with the portal at some point in time, not knowing who they're going to play next year. It is a terrible thing they've done to these two schools, and I just think in my heart of hearts, college football was never supposed to be this careless, this reckless, this thoughtless, and it is that if you'd have told me 20 years ago or any other time that the college people would treat two schools in this fashion that have not cheated, they've done nothing wrong, it just blows your mind. But that's what they're left to deal with. But I will tell you right now, if Nebraska has a chance for Cameron Ward, you reach out and get him.
They had a chance a couple years back. We'll see what Nebraska does at quarterback Go ahead.
Well, Schmidt, hate to bring it up. They had a couple chances at Joe Burrow, too.
I knew that was coming. How are the Burrows?
I'm sorry to bring that up. That's a bad memory.
No, hey.
What? We've had it brought up plenty over the past couple years.
We're fine, man.
I bet you do. About once a week, huh?
Yep. Somewhere say, hey, no, I get it. Jim Walden, longtime head coach, Washington State, Iowa State assistant here at Nebraska and played for Coach Devaney. Coach, last thought as we say goodbye, and it's so much fun to spend some time with you. And I wanted to get your take on Coach Prime in Colorado. We were out there earlier this year, but your thoughts on the whole situation in Colorado with what Deion's doing in year one.
Well, I like what Deion has done. I know people are you either on his side a little bit or you kind of think he's a showboat. I think he's a promoter. But more than that, I think he knows how to coach. I think he promotes a lot of things for his football team, but at the same time, he knows how to coach on the weeks when he's not promoting. I mean, you've got to give the guy credit. He took a lousy football team and has made it tremendously competitive already. So we may not like his style. We may not like the Coach Prime and all that, but doggone it, Deion's done a good job at Jackson State. He took over a terrible program there and brought it right to the championship level. He is doing wonderful things. I think, we all disagree with. I'd like to have had the portal when I was at Iowa State and I walked in and found 53 football players. I could have brought in 40 guys on the portal and not even cut anybody. But and what he did, we don't agree with necessarily, but it's the way the rules are today. And so why not? And overall, I have to give him credit. I think he's done it. He's done what he likes to do the way he likes to do it, and it's working. And maybe we don't like his style. I can go along with that too. But in the end, you got to say, what has he done for Colorado? And boy, I'll tell you, he's done wonderful things. For how much money he's made for them is off the charts.
Mm-hmm. Coach, enjoy yourself. Have a good weekend, and we'll get caught up again here later on in the year. Thanks so much for the time.
No problem. Always fun to get on with you, Schmitty. You guys take care and go Big Red.
Good to hear from Gentleman Jim, Coach Walden. is a longtime assistant at Nebraska, played for Devaney, and does radio on weekends. As Coach Walden is all over the Pac-12 and still some Big 12 / old Big 8 with his ties to Iowa State and Washington State. Good to hear from him. He's seeing some good football out west. He's keeping an eye on Nebraska and loved it. So Brandon has come up with a idea for Thursdays.
Dangerous idea.
I love this idea. So Brandon chimes in, Chris, we should introduce a whiskey over ice section to the Thursday live stream. Introduce a whiskey professional that tells us a new drink once a week.
I'd love that, actually.
We could do it.
A little bit dangerous.
Well, here's the question. Do we need anything more than just whiskey over ice?
We can just bring a different bottle of whiskey every time then.
All right. We'll call it the Brandon segment.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, you are reminded politely that the podcast's the way to go with Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Can get the audio for you, the segments you want, the entire show you want. You want the video, the Hail Varsity YouTube channels where you check us out there. And you want to rewatch the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, Jim Walden was just incredible. Love catching up with the legendary coach. He is just still a gunslinger, man. I love his takes on football and the tell it like it is, and he's got a wealth of knowledge. Good stuff. Also in hour 2 from our friend Matt Schick from Schick and Nick and ESPN and Sirius XM. Got things kicked off the proper way with one Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. We love talking Tuesdays with Mitch and appreciate your comments and contributions. Tomorrow, Mike Babcock, Evan Bland on the show, and a little Major League Baseball for us later on in the week with Jabba Chamberlain. Excited to talk with Jabba. How is your night? You're lined up. I've got beer and tacos on the brain, so I'm going to go do that with the bunny. Junior's working. You are going to go bowl. You're going to just shoot for a 290 tonight instead of a 300? That's where I was going. I know you're going to have pitchers.
I don't know about the pitchers tonight, actually.
Really?
We'll see. That's
is it
the TBD. I'm not going to have time to get in a workout before, and I'd like to get in a workout at some point. And I need to stay on schedule with that.
That workout is the Bud Heavy and the pitcher you're going to be hammering.
Well, I think the bowling could be a nice warm-up.
Or the original Coors.
I'd like to, and we'll see. If I'm not buying, if I should have a pitcher delivered to my table.
Have you found a place that has original Coors on tap?
I haven't really been looking all that hard.
No, I know you haven't, but I mean that's.
I just got a beautiful new Coors hat actually that I'm really excited. Like, it's supposed to be getting in.
Is it
today.
Like the golden one, like the golden Coors, like the Yellow Jackets, or not the Yellow Jackets, but you know what I'm saying, the yellow.
It's not yellow. It's camouflage.
So it's a camo Coors.
Yeah. Get this. Not only is it the camo Coors hat, it's also got those stupid ear flaps that come down.
That's all right.
They
That's
keep you nice and warm
for cold weather.
So I will be wearing that plenty this winter if given the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. I think that hat is supposed to be here at some point today, according to the shipping information, if you're to trust that. So we'll see.
Those hats are underrated.
If we get some cooler weather here later in the week, it might be the first chance to pull it out.
You're just gonna walk around and wear it. You know, work out outdoors in that hat, aren't you?
It'll look like I'm working. I'll just stand around with my hands on my hips though, and somebody will think I'm being busy. Which hopefully that's not the plan at bowling tonight. My average is sitting just above a 150. We're still at first place in the league, so we have another big night tonight. We took most of the points last week, looking to take most of them. That's just it's all about that. It's just stacking good weeks, Schmitty. Going 1-0 every single week. We've been 1-0.
1-0 every bowling outing.
We've been 1-0 every single week so far this year, except for one.
I'm 1-0 this week for steak and a beer. That's how we started the show.
Oh, you had to remind me. Okay.
We're going to end the show that way. So your job is to find a game to try and even us up.
For tonight?
No.
I was going to say Broncos-Chiefs on Thursday might be our next opportunity, as little as I want to touch that one.
Dude, you don't even want any of that. Because you're going to want Kansas City.
It's head versus heart yet again, as we were talking about, which means I'm probably going to take the Broncos to cover 10.5, and I'm probably going to lose.
That's a lot of points. Is that in Kansas City? Yeah, dude, that's a lot of points. Sean Payton may not return to Denver.